In today's video, I want to go over the type of variables that you can find in data sets. So we'll see different types of variables. We'll see ordinal variables, categorical variables, interval variables, and we'll start with the ordinal variable. So an ordinal variable has a finite number of distinct categories which can be ranked from lowest to highest. Okay, a good example of this is any variable where you ask a question and the answers is based on a Likert scale. So for example, whenever science and religion conflict, religion is always right. And you have to answer strongly agree, agree, disagree, and strongly disagree. We are able to establish a ranking between those different categories, but there's no intrinsic measurement units for those different categories. Okay, we can't say that agreeing is one unit away from disagreeing, and that disagreeing is one unit away from strongly disagreeing. Okay, we can just establish the ranking. Another example of an ordinal variable would be educational level when it's expressed in those different categories: less than high school, graduated high school, some college, college graduate. Because in this case, we can tell that someone who did not graduate high school has less education than a college graduate, but there again, there's no unit of measurement. Okay. Now, obviously, we could have asked that question quite differently, and we could have asked, how many years of education do you have? And to express that answer in years. And in that case, we would be in a situation where we talk about an interval variable, because it's similar to an ordinal variable, except that the intervals between the values of the interval variables are equally spaced. So for example, in the case of education measured as the number of years you spend at school, well, there is a unit of measurement that we know, and that's a year. So number of children is another example of an interval variable. Okay, we can count the number of children, and there's an obvious unit of measurement: height, etc., income, in dollars. All of those would be interval variables. The third type of variable that you can come across is known as a categorical variable. And this type of variable has a finite number of distinct categories, but there's no intrinsic ordering to the categories. So if we have in our data set a variable on the ethnicity of the respondent, well, there's no ranking that can be established between the ethnicities. And so that makes it a categorical variable. Similarly, the religion of the respondent or the country of birth. Okay, so whenever there's no intrinsic ordering, we call that a categorical variable. Right? And one sort of thing that I also want you to remember is that you will very often see in data sets that people assign numbers to categorical variables. Okay, so for example, if we think about the religion of the respondent, Catholic will be coded as 1, Muslim will be coded as 2, etc. Okay, but those numbers are entirely arbitrary and are completely meaningless. And so whenever you interpret that data, you really must make sure that you do not interpret those numbers as if they were meaningful. Okay, and the same is true for ordinal variables. Okay, so with ordinal variables, we have a ranking between the different categories, but there's no unit of measurement. So very often in data sets, you'll see people assign numbers to those different categories. For example, 1 for strongly disagree, and then 2 for disagree, 3 for agree, and 4 for strongly agree. But you should not interpret those values as if they were actual real values, because those are arbitrary. The only thing that we know about those categories is that there's a ranking between them. But I could, instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, I could have picked 1, 5, 6, and 11. Okay. This is used for coding purposes to simplify the presentation of the data. But if you analyze it as if it were an interval variable, then you're making a strong assumption. In some cases, it might be warranted, but you need to know that you're making this assumption, and you need to justify why you think that this ordinal variable can be interpreted as an interval variable, basically as as having a unit of measurement. So this is it for today's video. And in the next video, we will explore the difference between a population and a sample.